I'll show you this this cool thing I worked out the other day. Let me just pull up. So I was trying to figure out the other day how to make some plants, and plants use the golden ratio. A lot of stuff in nature does in terms of the way they're laid out. So if you look at this sunflower, the way these sort of pollen nodule things are laid out are in a spiral, and it's this specific spiral that follows the golden ratio. And I was just looking around for it, and I found this post. It was an old post on the Blender Stack Exchange, and somebody posted up this bit of code that you could use to create the golden ratio and use it in projects. And I was pretty excited about this because now with geometry nodes, we can actually use code like this and create geometry node setups using something like this. So I thought we could talk through that. Mateus. Nope, that was it. There were just 2 submissions this month. So feel free to jump in next month if you want. At the moment, we're highlighting everybody who submits because there's not too many. I might record this just in case. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to take, I'll just do the explanation again real quick, and then I'll talk about it. So, hello and welcome to another exciting Blender tutorial. Today we're going to be looking at geometry nodes and how to create plants. Let's get started. Okay, so I was looking the other day trying to figure out how to create a flower, and flowers use a specific, they use something called the golden ratio, right? They kind of follow this pattern of this specific spiral shape. And you can see it play out in things like the center of this flower here. And it's the same as like with the way the petals are laid out. It's a specific ratio in terms of how things are laid out. And I was trying to figure out how you could do this in geometry nodes. And so I was looking around, and anyways, I found this old post on the Blender Stack Exchange where somebody had figured out how to do it with Python. So they wrote this bit of code that creates this spiral. And I thought I'd try and recreate it in geometry nodes. Worked out that it was actually possible. So I thought it'd be interesting to show you how to do this and to use it to make something. So what we're going to do is we're going to follow this code line by line, and we're going to recreate it, but using geometry nodes. So let me, what I'll do is I'll just put this over here, and I'll put this over here. So we've got both up. Just want to be able to see it. Or actually, even more, what I'll do is I'll copy the code. There we go. And then I'll full screen this, and then I'll come over here and I'll grab the text editor, and I will create a new text file and I'll paste it in. So I mean, it would run just like this. Like if I just, click play, right? You can see we get this bit just from this code, right? This is a really cool spiral object, and we could change, different things with the info here, but we're going to do this in GeoNodes. So I'm going to go down here and I'm going to click on this timeline, and I'm going to pull up my geometry node editor. Now, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create something. Doesn't matter what it is. I'm going to create a cube, and I'll click new to create new geometry nodes. I'll zoom in here so we can see everything. I'll also turn on my screencast keys. There we go. Now, first thing I'm going to do is just get rid of the geometry nodes group input. We don't need that. And instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a mesh primitive line, and I'll plug that into geometry. Now the mesh primitive line, all it does is it creates a line, and it creates an object with, in this case, 10 vertices. I'll drag this out here, and I'll grab my spreadsheet so we can see what's going on. So you can see we have 10 sets here, 10 sets of vectors for the different points on this line. Now let's talk through this code. First thing is it defines this variable in, which is this little note here says this is the number of points. So it defines 1,000 points. And then there's a scale factor, which is defined as C. So C is 0.1, and that's the scale factor. Then we have this mesh equals bpy.data.mesh.new named spiral. So this creates that spiral mesh that you saw when we ran the code. And then we have this bm equals bmesh.new. And this is just part of, it's basically assigning the mesh. It's not really, we don't have to worry about this. Now, this is the most important part. We've got this loop here. So for I in range 0, comma n. So what does this mean? So for I is creating a new variable called I, and it's basically saying for everything in the range of 0 to n. And what's n? Well, n's already been defined as 1,000, which is the number of points. So for I, for every time, so basically it cycles through from 0 to 1,000 is what this is doing. And each time it does, it's going to increment the variable I. So it's going to go up. So at first it'll be 0, then 1, then 2, then 3, then 4. So it keeps going all the way up to 1,000. Now it defines a new variable called theta. And theta is I, so the number of whatever, number we're at, so between 0 and 1,000, times math.radians 137.5. So this is the ratio. 137.5 is the golden ratio. So it converts it into radians, multiplies it by I, and then what it does is it creates a new variable called R, and it takes C, which is the scale factor, and then it takes the square root of I, and it multiplies those together, and then it takes, adds a new vertex. This is what this bm.verts.new, and this new vertex, so it creates a new vertex in the mesh, and it puts it at the cosine of theta times R, and then it, so that's the x, and then the y is the sine of theta times R, and then z is 0. So it just keeps it flat on the z. So that's x, y, and z. And then it does some other code to update the mesh and blah, blah, blah. So that sounds kind of crazy complicated, but we can actually do this relatively simply. Well, not simply, but relatively easily in geometry nodes. So let's do it. So first thing is, let's just imitate this exactly. All right, so n is 1,000. So let's get a value node. Now, just so we're clear, I'm going to take this value node and I'm going to rename it. I'm going to call it n, right? And I'll call it n and then comma number of points. So that's what this is called. Now, we'll take this n number of points and we're going to set it to 1,000, just like they've done in the code here, and we'll plug it into count. And we have now 1,000 points. I won't scroll through all of them. Take my word for it. Now, the offset is 1 meter, right? So each of these points is 1 meter apart. Okay, that's going to be important. We're going to use that in a moment because we need to create an index for all these guys. That's one difficult thing about geometry nodes at the moment. You can see that, all the data that's stored in this line, we've got just the position, really. There's no other values associated with this. So we've got other stuff in edge, face, and face corner. No, not even that. Original, yeah, no. So there's nothing that allow us to actually access the ID. At least I don't think there is. I'll just check. Let's see. Yeah, there's no ID. So we need to create an ID. So that's the first step, because we need to be able to cycle through each of these guys one by one. So we need to somehow label each of these as something. So what we're going to do is the next step is we're going to grab an attribute. What do I want? Attribute. Let's do an attribute math node. Yep, math should be fine. And I want to grab the position. And actually, do I want to do, I probably actually just want to grab the vector math. I'm just thinking through this. What do I have? Do I have a separate XYZ? Yeah, we do. That's what we can use. All right, so we're going to grab an attribute separate XYZ. And we're going to take the geometry and plug it into here. And we'll plug the geometry into the output. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the position. And this is going to be, I'll drag this out so you can see result X, Y, and Z. We only want the Z. We're going to create a new attribute called ID. And we'll store it there. Now you can see that each one of these has an ID. And it's a whole number counting all the way up. And it corresponds to the number that's over here. And the reason why that works is because this, the fact that the offset is set to 1. So every single one of these points is 1 higher on the Z. So if I'm using the Z value and storing it as ID, then that means I'm going to have a count that corresponds to the number. Hope that makes sense. Anyways, that's important. We got to have that. All right, so now that we've got everything labeled, let's go to the next bit. So what we need to do is cycle through each of these. So we're going to use an attribute math node because that will cycle through everything. And we need to take, we need to create a new variable called theta. So we want I, which is the ID in our case. We could just make it the same, actually. We could just call I, so it's really, really clear. So I times math.radians 137.5. So let's go ahead and do that math. I'm going to take, let's see, do I need to do, let me just think. If I take attribute math, first I need to do the math.radians, I think. So I need to go, let's get a math node, drop that down. And we're going to go, where is it? 2 radians. And then we're going to type in 137.5. So this is going to do this part of the equation, math.radians. So we've just done the same thing here. So this is the value that's going to come out. So we need to multiply this value by I and call it theta. So let's grab an attribute math node, attribute math, drop it here. We're going to do multiply, and we're going to take float, pop that into here, and we'll take I, and we'll store the result in a new attribute called theta, just like in the code. So now you can see we've got theta. There you go. All right. Now we need r equals c times math square root of I. So let's go ahead and do the square root of I first. So again, I'll just shift D to duplicate. Actually, no, I. We're going to have to do that through every iteration. So we'll use attribute math again. Attribute math, we'll drop this here. And we're going to go for the square root. There it is. So the square root of I. And we'll store this in a value. I'll call it I squared. And then what we'll do is we'll take I squared and we'll multiply it by C, which was the scale factor. So let's do that. So let's duplicate this attribute math mode. So we'll take the I. Actually, we could probably just take, I think, can we take, do we need to do any more math with I? Doesn't look like it. No. Okay, so we can actually simplify this and we can just store the result in I. So we'll just save over I. And now what we can do is we could take the, let's see, so now we need to do C, so multiplying. So we're going to multiply. Actually, I'll do it the other way around. I'll make this the float, make this the attribute. So we're going to multiply C by I. And C is 0.1 is the value. I might, just to be clear, create another value node. And I'll call this value node C, which is my scale factor. And 0.1 is the value for that. So I'll plug that into here. So I can just bring that over here. So I've got my scale factor and my number of points. All right. And we're going to store this in R. This is going to be, we'll just use the same naming convention again. Okay. So we've got R. Now we need to move these points into these places. So we need to grab the cosine of theta. So let's do that. We can grab attribute math node, and we're going to get the cosine of theta. And we can just store it. No, we can't store it over because we need to use theta again. So we'll call this theta cos. And then we'll do the same thing. We'll go ahead and do the math for the other one here. Actually, we could save these instead of theta cos. I could just save these as x, y, x and y. Yeah, that would make sense. So I'll save this as x instead. Attribute math, bring this one over. So now we're going to get the sine, not the cosine, but the sine of theta, and we'll store this in y. And then we also need to multiply both of these by r, which is the scaling factor. So I'll do this, another attribute math. We'll go multiply, and we're going to multiply x by our scale factor, which is r. And I'll save it over into x, and I'll do the same thing here, but with y. So we'll grab y, and we'll save it to y. So now I've multiplied both of those by r. And z we don't need to worry about. That's just 0. So now what we can do is we can take, for sure we can just use a point translate node and a combine attribute combine x, y, z. Is that going to work? No. Oh yeah, it is. I can set these to attribute. So x is x. Oops. Did I just lose Blender? No, good. Let me save it. Desktop. All right. So actually what we could do is we could store this into position. That's probably the better thing to do. So we'll just use this attribute combine XYZ node, and we'll put X in the X, we'll put Y in the Y, and Z will make a float. We'll just make it 0, and we'll store this in the pose. Actually, I'll just plug it in so we can actually get the drop-down menu. Position, bam, all right, there we go. So now we've got what we were after. So you can see we followed this code step by step, and you may not even need to understand, exactly what's happening in the code, right? If this math is over your head, you can see how you can kind of follow these steps and put them in some kind of order in a way that works. Now, what's really cool is if I grab a group input node right here, I can actually create 2 new inputs. I can grab this one and this one, right? And I can name them. So this one's going to be a number of points. And this one is going to be the scale. And then if I go over to my geometry nodes thing, I get these options. So now you can see I can drag this up, and it's going to continue to expand the number of points. I can change the size of it with the scale factor, and it all works. So what do we do with something like this? Well, we come over here, and let's see. Let's create a bit of mesh. I can get rid of this and this now. I can drag this down so you can see this a bit better. And what we could do is create a UV sphere, let's say. I'm going to shade smooth. And let's see, I will grab, what do I want to grab? Go to X-ray view, shift box select the bottom bit. And what we could do with these is I could just scale them in. Like that. Grab them down. Just to create kind of like a little seed pod sort of thing. I could take this center vertex and delete it as well. I could grab this inner ring here and hit E to extrude and grab it down. 3 grid fill. There we go. Call this my pod. Oh, is the mic down too low? I just saw Beast's question. Yeah, I'm also just kind of like muttering, so that's probably part of the problem. All right, so anyways, we can take this. I'll drag this up here. And now we can take our little seed pod thing, and I'll grab an object info. No, none of that. We're going to do a point instance node. And after you like create, something like this, you could drag a point instance down. We can select the pod. We'll need to scale it. So I'm going to go for a point scale and drop it right before. And I'll grab a value node, drop it right here. Now I can drag this down. You can see we start to get something that's very similar to the seed pod that we were looking in that original flower image, which is pretty rad. We could also put a little bit of randomness into this. So grab this here and let's grab attribute randomize, and I'll just drop this here. We'll get rid of the scale because we're going to randomize the scale. Oh, I need to use, attribute. Is it different? Is it a vector? Oh, that's right. You have to switch it here. So we set that to vector. We can grab the position and we'll go to that. Oh, no, not position, sorry, scale. Go to that. And then we'll take the value here and I will make the value. I'll just set them both to 1 for now. And then we can just hold down shift. Well, first let's get a value that works well for the whole thing overall. So I will drag this down until they start to touch a little bit. I reckon that looks good. So 0.18. So let's copy that number, paste it here, put this one in the bottom, and then let's just shift this a little bit. Maybe bring this one down just a little bit. And now it's going to randomly scale between those two. They're all just a little bit different. We could do the same thing for rotation. So we'll stick with vectors, fine, and let's go rotation. Is that going to work? Why is it not coming up? Grab the value. I'll stick this into here. Find just a base value that works. So pi is going to make them face straight up. So I'll drag this down and I'll just take the second one and I'll just hold shift and drag just a little bit. And I'll grab this one, hold shift and drag the other way just a little bit. And that just kind of offsets them all a little. So they're all just like slightly different. And that kind of stuff's really, really useful in terms of creating realism. We could also create another collection in here to hide any bits that we're not wanting to be seen in our main render. So I can just hide that. And now the next thing we'd want is to kind of have it like puff up, right? So we want to raise up this whole group. So I think what we can do with that is what? How would I want to do this? Let's grab a attribute vector math node. Always keep the point instance at the very end. Rodrigo, so roughly the first hour of this stream was my art review. Everybody on the Discord, that'll be free. I'll put that up for everybody on YouTube. This section is going to be up on the Patreon. I'm going to try and turn this into a tutorial though, so then it will eventually come out for everybody. All right. Yeah, I know it does look like we're distributing alien eggs. That's what we should do. So anyways, let's take this attribute vector and we'll drop it in here. And I'm going to go for a length calculation. What length does, it takes the origin point and it figures out how far away every point is from the origin. So I'm going to take the position of all my points and I'll store this in, I'll call this length. And then we can use this to offset the height, except we need to invert it because the length is the number smallest here, biggest out here. So let's grab a attribute color ramp node and we'll take length and then we'll store it in length. So we'll just overwrite length. And we can invert it by just flipping these guys. We can also use a map range node that might be a little better. But let's go ahead and get this doing something to the position so we can see it. I'll go for an attribute mix node. And I will mix position with, although it's going to skew everything up. So really what I'm going to do is not this. I want to take the, see, if we're taking the length, I'll get a attribute map range node because we are going to use that. And we are going to map the length and we'll store it in length. I'll figure that out in a second. And then this is going to just give us basically the Z value that we want to be adding in. So if I set this as an attribute combine X, Y, Z, attribute math, vector math probably. Yeah, so what I'll do is or I could just convert it into a vector, right? Because let's have a look at what the spreadsheet shows us. We go over to the spreadsheet and let's have a look at, where is it? There. So yeah, length is just a floating point number. So what is it? Is it convert? Attribute convert. So we'll convert this attribute length. We're going to convert it to a vector. And save over it. Does that work? Yep, that turns it into a vector. And I'm going to invert this. So I'm going to make this 1 and that 0. That will flip these. So the stuff that's closest will be the highest number and the furthest away will be the lowest number. And then what we can do is, I need to get rid of the X and Y because I just want to work with the Z. So let's grab an attribute vector math node, throw this down here, switch it to multiply. We're going to grab length and we're going to multiply it by a vector and we're going to have 0, 0, and 1. So let's save that over. So now length will have 0, 0, and then only the Z value will have anything of worth in it. And then let's grab an attribute math node, attribute vector math node, sorry. And we're going to add, that's fine. Let's add the position with length. Actually, mix would probably be better because that'll give us a little bit of a slider. So let's go attribute mix node and we will grab the position and then we'll grab length and we'll store it in position. And now I can drag this out, but it's not going to be the right kind of fall off with this. And they are moving, it's right, because it's mixing to 0. So not quite what we wanted. So probably attribute math is the right one. So we go attribute vector math. And if we take the position and we're going to add it to length, And we will store that in position. Now we don't have any control on it, but that's all right because we can add that in right here by going attribute vector math, and we could multiply the attribute length by a value. So let's switch this to vector, and we'll store this in length. And then we can create a value node and drop it here. And then this will be our sort of factor that we can scale, which looks pretty good. But it's not very rounded, right? It's quite linear. We might be able to get this to do something for us. I haven't actually looked at what these do. So anyway, so this is quite a linear result, right? So we want to get some nice gradual fall off. Emery asks, can I enter a scene for you to review? Yeah, if you just check out on the Discord, we've got our monthly challenges. So if you enter into the monthly challenge, we'll do an art review for that. Just catch up on chat real quick. Hi, everybody. Got most of the, I think I've seen most of it. Yeah. All right. So let's see. How would we do that? We probably want to use the color map node. So we're changing the scale of it here. We're adding it there. So let's add the color ramp attribute color ramp node here. Let's see what this does for us. Well, this will convert it back into this, like it'll make it not a vector anymore. Well, maybe it won't. Let's see what it does. I'm not sure what this does. Where is length? Here it is. Okay. So if I take length and I overwrite length, does it stay a vector? Yeah, it does. Oh, but it gains an alpha channel, which is can be confusing. So now the reason why it's skewing is because we're adding into the X, Y, and Z, but we can fix that by coming into this white node here and getting rid of the R and the G and just use blue because it just translates it as X, Y, and Z. All right, so let's think. What's going to be the go linear? Oh, it's because it's clamping it on the Z. If we go down like that, that makes sense. So, because that looks good. There's a bit of fall off there, you can see. Well, what happens if we flip these? Is that going to just give it to us like that? Yeah. Probably don't need to be using that map range node anymore, but. Anyways, you can see now we got a nice subtle fall off. We could switch this to ease. It'll round it a little bit more. That there. That's pretty good. It's pretty cool. So you can see it's dynamic as well, right? Because we come back here and increase the number of points. It's going to keep growing. We can change the scale of this. We should probably get the scale to also change the size of these guys so that it really works appropriately. But I think it looks pretty rad. But you can see that spiral pattern that we were aiming for, the way it shows up. Make the scale a little bit bigger. Right. Pretty cool. Where's my my pod? Now we're gonna go crazy. Because who wants to make a sunflower? I mean, really, when you could make some kind of alien plant. That's my question to the universe. All right, let's see. Attribute randomize. Where's our which one doing scale for? This one is. All right. Now, I wonder if we can get like some kind of warp going with these guys. Like, what if we introduce some noise for everything that's over a certain point? How would we do that? I don't even know. We'd have to get some kind of gradient ramp that's traveling from bottom to top. Let's create a camera. Jump into it. Lock our camera to view. Let's pull out. And then let's turn off our lock camera to view. Let's go to our camera tab. Let's turn up passport 2. Let's take the rotation a little bit. And then lock it again. Let's get a slightly better composition. Kind of come up some. All right, now let's take this weird thing and let's give it a new material. Let's switch into rendered view. Let's grab a sunlight. Rotate it around. Something like that. Let's switch to Eevee. Let's switch to cycles, I mean. And let's turn on adaptive sampling and denoising. And I'll turn my samples up to like, I don't know, 100. And let's go back to our, actually, let's grab an HDRI. Come over here to HDRI Avon. Let's pick a nice one. There we go. It's a great website, HDRI Avon. If you're not using it, it's really good. This one looks nice. It's new. Just going to grab the 1K one, but not anything bigger than that. Back over to here. Let's go to my shader editor. Drag this out a bit, and I'll go to my world. And we'll grab an image, texture. There we go. Environment. Actually, it should be an environment texture. Drop that in to help lighters. Now I'm going to take my camera and I'm going to turn on some depth of field. Drop this down to like 2 maybe. Hard to tell at the moment. I need to kind of select things a little bit. We're seeing a bit too much below it. So I might grab my cube and actually before we do that, let's just get a cool cool color going. Oops. That's right. I need to plot. Which better now? Because I want to turn off this. Actually, I'll just get rid of the pod by dragging it up so we can't see it. Oh, here. Oh, is it Landfear? Thanks for letting me know. Is my sound dropping when it's just when it resolves, like the render is resolving? Let me turn up my specular on these guys. Turn down my rest. So it's right now. Is it like, is my voice dipping out? Oh, Rodrigo, the way I made the outside of the camera black, so if you select your camera and you come to the camera tab, just come down under viewport display. There's this option here called Passepartout, and you can turn this up to 1. It blackens the outside. So it doesn't affect your render, it just helps you focus. Right. So these are some weird looking blueberries. Pretty cool though. I'm going to try and fill in the bottom area by, actually, I'll just go Shift S, cursor to selected, Shift A, mesh, UV sphere, scale it up, scale it on the Z, bring it down. Let's do it like that. It's pretty cool. Let's turn our depth of field up even further. Okay, so what if in the material we've got like the tip is a bit brighter or like is another color? I think that could be really cool. So we'd want some kind of gradient that favors the top. I might switch over to Eevee to experiment with this. Let's go separate X, Y, Z. Drop this here. Let's grab a texture coordinate node. Drop this here, and let's take the object coordinate, and then let's have a look at, in the emission, let's have a look at the Z. So you can see how that kind of makes the tips brighter and the bottom darker. I can grab a color ramp, drop that in here. We can scale things a little bit. Now I can get just the tip. Like that. I could also, technically, what we could do to raise this would be to use a math node. So if we grab a math, drop this here, get rid of the color ramp, plug this into the emission. I'm just going to subtract from it, and that will just lift it up because it will slowly subtract more and more from it. So I can get just to those tips. Now I'll clamp it as well. It doesn't get too super hot. Now I can use this to affect the color a little bit. So now I could grab like a color ramp, because that will allow me to inject color into this. And I could stick this into, let's say, the subsurface color. And we could make it like maybe like a red. Do it the base color. I could use this black. I could color pick the blue. And pipe that in there, that in there. That will give it to me as well. So let's see what could be some fun. What would kind of look like a natural. It's kind of nice when it goes like kind of a pink color. Might make this a bit more saturated. Make them maybe a little bit more rough, and maybe put a bit of a Musgrave texture into the roughness. So I'll take, grab a color ramp. Oops, not vertex color. Color ramp. Stick the height into the factor, and then we'll take this and we'll plug it into the roughness. And then I'll take my scale up and my dimension up as well, and my detail up on all these guys. And I never want it to be perfect in its reflections. So I'll bring this off black and just drag it up a little bit. You can see that just adds in a nice bit of realism there for us. Drag these together a bit to kind of make the difference a bit harsher, but I think it's a bit nicer with the actual real fall off there. Now it'd be nice to do like a little bit of like a bumpy stippled texture to this stuff. So let's grab a noise, not white noise, just a regular old noise texture, and a bump node. Sorry, we are a little bit crowded over here. Oops. Let's unlock the camera view so I don't wreck it. So we'll take the factor, we'll plug it into the height, and then we'll take the normal and plug it into the normal. And we're going to take the scale way up. And we're going to take the distance. I'll make it like 0.1. And I'll bring the strength right down. I want this to be like a very subtle effect. There we go. It's pretty good. All right, now let's play with some transmission as well. That could be nice. What if we took this and plugged it into transmission? Now, in order to see this roughness, the result in Eevee, we're going to have to turn on, go to Tool, where is it? Item, no, sorry, in the material. That's where we need to go. Into Options, we need to set this to alpha hashed, and alpha hashed as well for the shadow mode. And we need to turn on this first one, which is screen space refraction. And then we need to come over here. We can turn on ambient occlusion, turn on bloom, and screen space reflections. We need to turn on refraction. So that'll start cranking that up. And it doesn't quite work going like full on transmission. Maybe I'll turn the roughness up a little bit. We might need to have another color ramp on this bit. So I'll grab a color ramp and I'll drop it here. This will allow me to kind of change the values for transmission. Because if I have transmission set to 1, it's like fully transmissive. Whereas if I bring this down, the closer it gets to black, the more I'm basically turning it off, right? So I can kind of find a mid-ground if I bring my roughness back down as well. Now, do we want to saturate this a little bit more? I think so. I think it actually is kind of nice like this. Something about it feels kind of real to me, naturalistic, which is cool. See what that looks like in cycles. It's quite nice. Love the depth of field. All right, let's pop back into Eevee. And let's get this sun lamp working for us a little bit better. Maybe pop a little bit of color into it, a little bit of warmth, or a bit of blue, that outdoor environment look. And then if we take our HDRI, so if I come back up to my world, let's grab a texture coordinate node. And a mapping node. And we take generated into the vector, vector into the vector, and then we can just rotate it and find a nice kind of spot for this. Pretty cool. Now I wonder, I'm going to lock my camera to view again. Take my camera. I love this new depth of field in Eevee. It's so nice. I might take this group here and increase the number of points to expand it out further. Might be overkill. Just experimenting. Proportional editing. It's down a bit, I think. Maybe take this center bit, scale it. Nice. A little bit of curve. Now what happens if we take this, let's take this one, bring this up here, take this, make it black. It's right up. And then what if we pop this into the emission? That looks cool. feel like we should have some more contrast in the base here. Like I feel like this should be darker. Um, so maybe turn. I think we just need to take the subsurface color and make it something like that. Just playing around with the transmission, but I think it's best keeping that off. Just having a little bit at the tip. There's some roughness on there. Yeah, it's pretty good. Fairy berries. That's right. It's pretty funny. All right. Let's see. Get our cameras not locked to view. I feel like we should have some leaves, maybe a couple of like really big leaves. I think they could look nice. Correct my view here. Scale this up. Go into edit mode. Control R. Grab this point. Grab it on the X. Turn off proportion editing. Pull that out. Scale Y. Bring them in. And let's see. Might grab my knife tool and cut from here to here. And I'll just subdivide all this. It's not going to give me a good subdivide, is it? I'll actually delete these two faces, so it's a little more of a clean setup. I'll hit E to extrude, grab X, pull them out, scale X, scale Y, bring them in, scale X 0 like that, and then grab this one out on the X like so. Now if I put on a subdivision surface modifier, crank up those subdivisions, I can grab, let's see, I'll do a loop cut right here. I'll just grab it all the way in and then grab Y a little bit. Control R. Do another loop cut here. Grab that center bit and I'll just grab it down a little bit. That will help to create that sort of center, divot. There we go. Now let's take this and let's take these guys and grab them up. Switch X-ray mode back on, pull that up. Kind of curve it a little bit. And I think I should grab these middle bits like so and grab them down a bit. Looks all right. Increase those subdivisions. Oh, we're upside down. Y. Let's bring this around. Grab it on the X. Scale it down a little bit. Looks pretty good. Now I'm wondering, we could just use geonodes for this. So what I could do here is I could bring this up here and I could go Shift A, and we're going to create mesh primitive circle. And then I'll just bring it all the way over here to the end. Grab a join geometry, stick this here, and then we'll grab another point instance and we'll grab our leaf object. I'll put this leaf object in my hidden collection as well. Select these guys again, take the geometry into the geometry and up here to the join. And now I can increase the radius. Yeah, switch it to the leaf. There we go. All right. And I can change the number that I want. Now we need to rotate all of them. So how do we do that? What's the right way to align rotation to vector? Is that going to do it? Grab the normal of the, no, I wouldn't be able to, but I could create a vector from, well, each of these points is a vector. I've got a directional vector if I consider them being from the origin. So I grab an attribute position node. Hey, bingo. That's what we wanted. There's your sunflower, by the way. And let's see. What I can do now is I need to rotate them. So let's go point rotate. Now, do I need this before or after? I guess I'll need it afterwards, or before, I mean. So I'll bring this here. Let's do, oh, okay, so just writes, does it overwrite it? Oh no, there we go. So set that to 0, set this to 0, set this to 180. There we go. Oh, not quite 180. I still have one that's not doing it. It's kind of cool, actually. I wonder why it's doing that. Object point, axis angle. Same problem. I then just do attribute math, maybe. Vector math. I'll take the rotation and there you go. So pi, and then bring them up a bit like this. And then we can take the radius down a bit so it's nice and snug against the center section. Decrease the number of vertices so they don't overlap as much. And then we can increase their scale. 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 And what have I done? Adding scale. Why would adding 0 do that? Value node. Drop this into here. And we'll turn this up. Nice. Maybe turn this down a little bit. We could create a second group. Actually, what if I took, what if we did a randomize, attribute randomize geometry into geometry, scale, and let's see, a minimum of 1 and a maximum of a little bit bigger. How's that? Is that going to look good, or is that not going to look good? A little bit of a difference is fine. Like that radius needs to be a touch bigger. I also feel like these guys should come up maybe. Or actually, let's just do a different, let's have a second group. So I could take this group. What do I want to do? I could take this whole group here. Actually, just do a scale. Does that work? No. Let's see. Take probably simplest just to take this group and duplicate it. And duplicate that. And add this into the geometry as well. With this one, I can take my radius up a little bit, like so. And I can also rotate the whole system. So let's see, let's grab a rotate, point rotate. Is that gonna do the whole? No, that does the individual bits. Does it translate, transform? There it is, transform. I can rotate the whole system, but we're gonna have to offset those guys. So maybe we can peel them down a little bit more. That's pretty good. Just offset that. Looks nice. Let's jump back into our camera and let's lock our camera to view. Let's find a view that's going to let us see a little bit of this stuff. There we go. And this collection back on. Let's get the leaf model and the pod. We're just going to stick them way up out of the scene. Grab the leaf, create a new material. Oh, not geometry nodes. A new material for the leaf. Call this leaf. Give it like a greenish kind of tint for now. Bring this down. Let's go back to rendered view. And back to my camera. Let's get our focal distance set correctly. Yeah, let's get this leaf material looking good. It's hard to say what a good angle on this is going to be. Something like that. I feel like we need probably a few more leaf systems as well. So I'll come over to here, grab all this. Grow that out a little bit and rotate. Maybe bring this one down some. There we go. I feel like the sphere needs to be a bit bigger. It's kind of like blocking out the holes we've got. Now this leaf material needs some work. So we need some bump. Switch this to my shader editor. It's a bit bigger. All right, back to the leaf. All right, let's grab a, what do I want? A Musgrave? No, Verona. Verona gives us that nice kind of, plant-like texture. Grab a bump, put the distance into the height and the normal into the normal. Turn it right down. And bring that strength right down. Bring the scale up maybe. Let's try F2. Let's see, what do I want? Smooth F1. Good initial kind of setup. And let's grab another one. Set this one to F1. And I'll grab a color ramp. Throw that down, throw this into the factor, color into the, what do I want? I'm going to grab my color, my base color. Make both of these the base color. Now that allows me to bring that in here and grab one of them and just change them a little bit. Yeah, that's kind of nice. Could also possibly use that drive the subsurf color. Might shift this, hue shift this a little bit towards the yellow. That's nice. Now we do need a bit more of a bump over here. So let's grab a noise texture and let's add a mix RGB, throw these down, put this one to here. And we just keep it set to mix in 0.5 for now. Turn the scale right up. And then I'll pull it back. So it's only doing it a little bit. Nice. I feel like we need a little bit of displacement along these edges. Like I feel like they're a bit too even. So let's see what happens if we put a displacement modifier. a new texture. We'll come over here. We'll add a clouds. And we'll jump back over to the modifier and we'll turn it right down. We'll just let it do a little bit of work for us. Not a lot. And then let's head back over to the texture and we'll change the size. Something small. That's pretty nice. I might take my roughness up a little bit more on these leaves. Could even clear coat them. I could max out the clear coat so it's like they've got this waxy outer layer. That could be nice. Now, let's see. I also feel like they should be maybe a bit darker as they go down. So maybe we should grab the separate XYZ again and grab the texture coordinate. Grab the object coordinate. And I guess it would be the Z that we want. Let's just have a look at the emission, just check it real quick. Yeah, that looks about right. So if I take color ramp, no, not vertex color, color ramp, we can invert these. Yeah, so it looks like, can't quite tell actually. Let's use a math node. And we'll drop that here and we'll set this to subtract. Okay, is that going to work for us? Not quite. Oh, maybe it's enough. It is kind of achieving mostly what I'm after. If I look at the Y, is that any better? No, it's only going to be side to side. Yep. Now we will use the Z. Just pull it out a little bit. And then we'll use this to darken things up. So I'll flip these. That, I'll unplug it from the emission. And then I'll grab a mix RGB, drop it up here, set it to multiply, and then grab the color and stick it in the second slot. Turn this up. And you can see it's going to darken these leaves as they get closer to the base. This looks nice. I might switch it to ease. Give it a bit more of a gradual fall off. And I can use subtract to control. That looks quite nice. I feel like the berries could use the same kind of a thing. Really. So I want to do it so we can't see through this as much. Might take this group and go back to geometry nodes. And maybe shrink the plant leaves in a little bit more, maybe. Increase the number of leaves. It's a little bit better. Maybe increase the number of Oh, thanks, Acapier. That's exciting. Just pushed over 500. That's been the big goal over on Patreon. Very cool. We've reached our target. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Yeah, maybe make the last row of berries bigger. That's a good idea. We could do something like that, possibly. I am going to take the... I'm going to increase the count a bit. Push them up a bit more. It's good, except we're getting a little bit of cut through on these leaves. So we'll need to move them around a little bit. Let's grab... I'll just do the same thing. I'll grab a transform, except I'll zero everything out. And I'll drop this here. This way I can move this set down just a little bit. It looks better. Yeah, cool. Let's improve our depth of field a touch. Distance, where's the distance? Focus distance, undo that from the cube. I'm holding down shift while I do this as well, so that I've got a little more control. It just goes a little slower when you do it that way. All right, now I feel like the blue is sort of looking a little weird, so maybe we should affect that some. It's looking pretty cool. It's weird, very weird, but very cool at the same time. Our leaves are looking a little rough there. I have to put a subdivision surface on them, I think. Subdivision surface. There we go. Just one should be enough. Maybe two. All right, let's come back to the shader for the blueberries. And let's switch this back to the shader editor. Weird is cool. Oh, cool. We hit 500 in Discord as well. That's exciting. Nice. Glad to have everyone. All right, let's try some other colors for these things. Let's see what else looks cool. You never know what you're gonna run into. Desaturate them a little bit. Like it's kind of nice almost having the green. This really isn't going to affect things very much because we got that globe tip. What we should do though is come over to here and make a really dark color down here at the base. Yeah, thanks, Zora Weaver. Yeah, it's based on a bit of code that I found for creating a phylotexis pattern. Really doing anything, is it? I think we'll have to just, let's keep that off. All right, let's keep color hunting. Sometimes if you just do a little bit of subsurface, it looks nice. Fiber optic berry sculpture. Yes, that's exactly what this is. I don't know. The blue is pretty striking, isn't it? It's a nice contrasting color. I don't know. What do you guys think? Is the green of our leaves maybe a bit too intense now? Should we try swinging them in another direction? Maybe should we spread the berries a bit more? Go back to geonodes. And we go to our rotation. Pushing that a bit further. Alter Eager says, I think I want some blueberries now. Fiber optic blueberries. Just pushing in a little more randomness into those. Maybe even a bit more randomness in the scale too. Is that going to be a good idea? Nah. Start to break down a little bit. I mean, if they're bigger, maybe that's cool. And if we do that, we should take the number of points down. Or the scale, maybe. We should take the scale up. And then drop the number of points. Yeah, that looks a little bit better actually. I feel like our leaves are a little too saturated. So I might pull them back a little bit. So turn the subsurface off, see what that looks like. That is kind of nice actually. Go darker, maybe. What happens if we swing these into like the purples? Does that do anything? Feel like a Christmas tree plant, you know, do it kind of like a red. Be nice. Now it's an alien plant. Purple leaves. Actually kind of like that. Almost looks like a, those ultraviolet photographs. Seeing if a closer camera angle looks nice. I feel like we can identify enough of the object if we're that close. At least when we're at like here, we can kind of see a bit of what we're looking at. What happened if we put some like droplets of water on the surface of these leaves? That could look cool. It's pretty sweet. It's weird looking, that's for sure. We had a bunch of these. Like now that we've got this whole thing, like our leaves are a little not quite working. really cool. And what's neat about all this is that because we've done all this with geometry nodes, right? Come back in here now, and we can do little things like subtly adjust the rotation of the center bits, and they all move. I think it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. Let's check out what it looks like in cycles. This will require a fair amount of samples. Might turn the lights off. Not sure if they're doing anything. All right, let's give that a go. Let me try use optics for the denoising. I use adaptive sampling, and I'll go for 500 samples. Performance, I'll go 512 by 512, and that should be good. Let's stop that, and let's go render image. Nice. There we go. Well, that's pretty crazy. Pretty happy with this. There's probably some other things I'd want to do to it, but it's pretty good for now. I might pick this up again and run with it a little bit more, but yeah, it's pretty awesome. Well, I hope you enjoyed that process. I had fun just kind of doing a bit of an experimental play, and really making this just an image that was fun for me to put together. Sometimes it's nice, instead of explaining everything in a tutorial format, to just sit down and create something. So yeah, hope you enjoyed that. Hope you had a good time watching me trying to figure it out. So I'll do an official close for the tutorial section, because I'll still try and cut this first part into a tutorial for everybody. So anyways, hope you really found this helpful and interesting. See, I've pushed this follow Texas spiral system pretty far, and just added a ton of different materials and things to really flesh this out, and created some leaves and all that stuff to create this like bizarre futuristic, I don't know, alien plant thing, because, you know, who wants to make a sunflower, right? So anyways, pretty cool, really useful. I hope that you found it really valuable, like learning how you could take you know, an equation or an algorithm that's broken down in code, and how you could translate that into something like geometry nodes. So if you find similar types of equations, how you might be able to digest those in a way that you can input into geometry nodes as well. So I hope you found that really useful. So thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button, leave me a comment, let me know what you think, and if you have any other tutorial ideas you'd like to see. Don't forget to check out the Discord. We've got a link in the description below, as well as the Patreon and all that. So this was a almost 2-hour-long live stream where I created this image. If you'd like to watch the full uncut version, you can find it on Patreon, or you can find it on YouTube for channel members there at the All Access Pass level and higher. So you can go check that out. Yeah, and hopefully you've enjoyed this. Thanks again for watching, and thanks for checking out the channel. I will catch you in the next tutorial. Until then, see ya. Bye. That was really long. That was epic. I didn't intend to do this. I had other things I was doing this morning. Anyways, thanks for joining, everybody. Hope you had fun. It was really cool. We got somewhere. Very interesting image. Yeah, it's nice. Anyways, thanks for joining, everybody who's been around all the way from the beginning. Thanks for tuning into the art review at the beginning, and then thanks for watching this bit too. It was really fun. I'll catch you guys in the Discord. Until then, have a fantastic rest of your week. I will see you later.